Hey guys, Laura J here, and it's the day after the last lawfully organized summit where Jacquie Phoenix was not able to make it. She let me know in advance, and I said it on the call, but she had actually did what I asked and recorded a video that I didn't actually get to on the call simply because I hadn't seen it and I got focused, and so I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to hear Jackie's message and also know that this is the Practical Lawful Dissent UK, Canada, and Commonwealth group, that you can access the units underneath where the barcode there, the bar tab, and then after you've taken the oath, it actually then gives you the notice process, the correct order to send the notices, which I need to go back through all of this. So I need to do my homework rather than just feel like I need to be taking the steps. I need to really be going through it. Sometimes when you have somebody else in it with you, you don't feel like you have to do all of what you expected them to have done. But at the same time, we really have to support one another in this process. So I'm being fully transparent where my friend Chantel Matheson and I are at step 2. And so we've got a few more to go, and we're going to go through those. We will track our progress and we will keep you posted. And so we very much hope to have your help in ending the treason that is being committed. And so we look forward to having you come on this journey with us of redress and seeking the return of law to the lands with sovereign rulers at the helm. So the final 14th unit is the end. So there's a few of those. So we'll have to go through and really unplug what all of this is and get them into the order that they need to be, which they're already placed that way. So it's just literally a matter of following the steps and then knowing that you've got the support. David Robinson actually mentored Jacquie Phoenix, who is from Calgary. And so David unfortunately passed November 10th, 2020. And ultimately, he prepared all of that for us. He prepared all of this for us. So he trained Jacquie to seek international redress. And so here is the lady of the hour.
Hi, Canada. Jacquie Phoenix here. Just letting you know, sorry I couldn't make the summit tonight. I don't have enough signal in the little town in Wales I'm currently in doing redress meetings. Sorry, my voice sounds a little bit rough. I've been doing a lot of these talks. The excitement here is just absolutely phenomenal. The UK is lighting up with excitement for redress. So come on and get your groundwork done. We need to do this. I will definitely be able to be there next Thursday, 100% guaranteed, because I'm taking some time off. I need to rejuvenate my energy and get my voice back so I can get back on the road and continue this tour for redress. So sorry I couldn't be there tonight, but thank you very, very much. Hopefully some of my admins will be able to be there with you. See you next Thursday.
So that was the message that Jacquie had wanted me to let you hear on the summit. I forgot. I'm not perfect, but I'm doing my best, just as we are asking you to do too. And what we're asking is for you to be open to a new point of view and to consider the fact that maybe we've been lied to. Maybe the ones that are in power like it that way. And maybe they like it when we think that they are the ones that get to dictate what we do as sovereign beings that are in a supposedly sovereign country or sovereign province. BS. Only a human being can be sovereign. It is one who is not dependent on anything or anyone outside of themselves, fully independent and with full authority and command over the vessel that they are driving. And in our case, it is our body. And yes, you know what? That's life. Sometimes you put your shirt on the wrong way when you put it back on in the morning, and then you just don't feel like changing it, and so it looks like a different shirt than the one that she wore in the video. So I thought I would just point that out because it's funny, but it's also significant from a matrix perspective because we've just flipped it. I have worn my shirt backwards the next day. So it's two different appearances with one thing. And that is ultimately what is happening in this matrix that we live in anyway. So all of this is an alternative perspective from a Canadian empowerment coach that is asking my fellow citizens and sovereign beings, citizens being corporate, which is not the realm we play in, and to ask us all to become more aware of the language that we're using so that it doesn't use us and abuse us the way that has been happening on this global stage. My God, we all know it, we feel it. We feel right and wrong. It's inherent within our nature. It's a survival instinct. We see justice and fairness. We observe it. We feel it. And then when it's not right, we feel that too, even if we want to pretend it doesn't exist. Well, my friends, it is time for us to say, look, we are the ones that are doing this. We are the people. We are the ones that are in the positions where Nuremberg trials years ago, they were told your job as the excuse is not good enough. You will be held to account for your choices. We will all be held to account for our choices. And right now, we're asking you to hold yourself to account, to understand that you may have been aiding and abetting treason, and now it is time for you to wake up, to understand that your soul is not worth a dollar figure. Your soul is worth so much more. You are the individuated expression of the grand overall designer you came here as to experience yourself creating in the 3D. We have to understand who we are, and that will help us as we move forward. But in order to do that, what it seems, so far as what I've discovered it so far, is that Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta is our best option. And the reason that I say that is that it was the first one that has in 3 places that it is ever binding. Therefore, it is the original, and the ones that were created after it, such as in 1216, when a 9-year-old king took out the People's Protection Clause and didn't just didn't tell the people. Instead of carrying on with that falsity as the truth, we're going back to the original, and we're going to say, look, we can bring in things that have come from then since, but first we need to restore order. We need to hold people to account. We need to help people understand that the choices you make here just don't impact here alone. It impacts everywhere. In an energetic universe, it's the ripple effect. And there are places beyond here that are watching, because the choices we make now literally impact way more than what we can perceive. It is time for us to understand that this is a psyop of the ultimate kind, and we have been warned, we have been told, we are under a spell. We have been spellcast with words, propaganda that has sown fear in the cells of our being, and it is time for us to put faith in those cells instead. And in order to do so, we need to be able to take action. We need to be able to move together so that we can be the wave. It is time for us to say, yes, it will cost you. It will cost you dearly. It will cost us all. It already has. It will continue to, and things will get worse before they get better. It is true. But it is also time for us to know that when we do band together and unite, we have to stick together. We have to actually understand that after the tsunami, there is a cleanup time, and it is traumatic, and we discover loss we didn't recognize. And there are places such as the silver and gold storage units that haven't been entered into for decades because it's top secret. Is there anything in there? Our money system, our currency system currently is not based on anything. What? We're creating a new energetic database, a new energetic monetary system. And all of what is happening right now is tied to becoming patented by the GMO ingredients that we are consuming and could have injected into us as well if we don't step up and say, no, I am a human being with an extra E because I choose to intentionally direct my energy towards what will benefit not just me, but humanity, because we are all in this together. Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta is how we, the people, can take our power back. But we have to also be willing to change the BS that goes with it. Because as the walls crumble, there is a very uncomfortable phase in between what could be if we persist and what is or was and no longer is. We all know that life before COVID doesn't exist any longer as it was. That is a falsity that we hopefully enjoyed while we were there, because now we have more to care about, because we realize now who we are, what we came here for, and our responsibility in all of that too. I hope this message inspires you to do something that scares you, because if you are not scared, you are not growing. The body interprets fear and excitement exactly the same. So I hope that you will quiver in your boots all the way to the post office with your oath and 3 signatures from witnesses. It is time to shift allegiance from the parental force we were taught to revere over to one that we actually do, which is the one within. We must become responsible parents for ourselves. We must begin to ask questions. We must remember how to think, not just think about what to think. It is time to remove our minds from the textbooks and theories that were in them, laid out by predecessors, those who came before or still are here. And we must understand that we are social scientists. This is the ultimate experiment. And right now, there is a very dangerous spell cast on humanity that we are being called to break. And Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta, I believe, is one of the ways that we can do that. So it was the loophole that no one has been upholding. And until there are enough of us to say, hey, no, you check that out. Yeah, don't just put it into the to-do list. Do it now. When enough of us show up and say that, shit gets done. Let's get shit done, guys. Let's get back to the summit. This is a summit because we really want to hear from everybody that comes, and we want to make sure that you guys have access to the information that we're all kind of gathering together, because that's what this is. This is an evidence gathering adventure. And so it's for the ones who are committed to actually exercising our sovereign powers as the ones that are here to be the change we seek in this world. So Jacquie Phoenix is not able to be with us tonight because of technological issues. Apparently she's in a space in the UK today where she's not able to get reception, so she's not able to join us. But we are actually going to be watching the first 30 minutes of the William Keat presentation. So if you haven't seen that, it's amazing information. And if you have seen it, the second time you watch anything, you have new eyes to see the information, because you're now seeing it for the second times and you already have understanding from the first. So now you go deeper. And that's really why we've got Mary Yeti on here tonight, who is on the adventure and going collecting evidence in your territory. So, Marietta, if you wanted to unmute yourself and just give a brief intro to where you are in the process, how long you've been involved, and just like the 1 minute intro to you and why you're here tonight, that would be very much appreciated. And then Chantel and I will share our experience of actually going to almost to the police station because we got the processes confused and now understand we have to send a letter before then you send or actually go to the police station. So we're in this too, man, and it's not because we're perfect and it's not because we think that we're above the law, as we always say, but it's just like it needs to happen. And so we're just doing the very best, fumbling our way through. So, Marietta, you did as well. And if you want to share that experience, I'm sure it'll be useful to the ones that tune into the recording later.
Hi, everyone. Okay, my name is, pen name is Mariette, and my name is Elizabeth. So I started in May of 2020. And I took my oath, and it took me a long while. And then I sent my notices, and then I sent the note, like the first notice of lawful standing. And then I made a mistake, and I sent the notice of what's the one, acceptance, the one that if they make a demand. So I sent it to the police and to the courts. Could have been why I got the letter from the legal counsel from the judge side of it, because I put them on the other notice that I wasn't aware of. So when you first start, you make some little owies, but hey, you continue on, you learn. They've been put on notice bigger than the rest of them. So yeah, we know what we're up to. We know we've got Article 61 on our side. We know it's Magna Carta 1215, one law, constitutional law. So yeah, we're going to continue on. So pretty simple. Keep doing this. This is coming up 2021. And I hope more people just do it because it's well worth it gathering the evidence that we need so we can end this very tyrannical stuff that we're going through. So yep, dissent on.
Absolutely. And thank you for being there on Tuesday when Chantel and I were trying to figure out what needed to happen, because the beauty about these summits, and while in the replay, there will be those who judge and say there were 5 people on there and make a joke about how futile it is to even try. But you know what? If we don't try, we're going to die either way. And at the end of our lives, when we have the recap, it's like we're going to know, the ones who actually are here on the show, that we did our part because we showed up and we took the steps and we figured out what needed to happen. And when we were scared and actually shaking, we spoke anyway. And even if we had to quiver in our voice when we did it to the police officer that called us back, because when Chantel and I thought that we had to go to the police station and we thought that we had to put the police on notice first, basically what we did was we got the paperwork, and I should have had it closer to me to be able to just easily reference, but it was the notice of lawful objection that we were going to actually hand deliver. And then we found out that actually that is what needs to get mailed to them. And it is the original copies that we send off because we're doing this lawfully. Legally would have us, instead of doing it in the giving the original and we keeping the copy, legal would have us receive the copy as if it were the big thing. So we're doing this all the correct way as best as what we can. And there's aspects where we don't actually know what we're supposed to do as we go. So I got distracted. And so I just wondered, Chantel, I don't need to be the one to share our experience. I would love for you actually to give an intro, if you would, to people as to where you're at, we're at in the process, since we're kind of doing this together. And if you want to share what it was like for you to actually
be going through this and to get the phone call back, because I had called the police. That was the story, that I got then distracted because I could hear noise and it needs to move over to Chantal. But basically, I ended up calling the police to get the address and to also figure out who we were supposed to address the letter to, which we got a sergeant's name, of which we were told that it's only for the sergeant on duty that they were able to give us. And they said that there wasn't a chief constable. And so there are things that were confusing for the ones that are trying to go through the process like us. And then there's the confusion on their part because they don't know. And then now with COVID, you have to make an appointment or a call in to be able to meet with anyone to deliver the evidence, which, since that's what I thought we needed to do, I basically arranged an appointment and had to give all of my information to the police, which is not ideal. And ultimately then got a phone call back and, you know, and then thinking we still need to then get to their place and we need to get our signatures and then the photocopies of all of that to get it over. And so we called Marietti and she advised us that we were actually not following the process correctly and only just needed to post the letter. So we then had to call off the police and tell them we were coming in 2 weeks once they had received the evidence that I had notified them I was going to hand deliver, and then had to change how that was going to go down. But you were right by my side through it all, Chantal. So you tell everyone what it was like for you, please.
Hello. So I've only just taken the oath last month, to the one that we have to send to the barons. And that first step was terrifying, let alone yesterday. The first step didn't go well, yeah, like you said. And the second step, we didn't even do right. So thank God for Marietti, because that would have been embarrassing.
Well,
it was absolutely terrifying when they called back as well, and I could hear everything that they were saying on their end and what was being said here, and it was literally so terrifying. I was shaking. And at one point, the police officer asked Laura who she was doing this with, because I think you mentioned that we were coming in, and she asked who that was. And I looked at her and I was like, don't give them my name. I'm not ready. So that was very interesting, and I'm very happy and lucky that I had Laura, who spoke beautifully to them. And it wasn't that bad. It just was a very good lesson that you need to actually read and do what you're supposed to do. My computer's about to die. Sorry, hold on.
Yeah, so that's really, you can read things, and then you can do the videos and the walkthroughs, and then you get to do it, and then it's like, oh, I still didn't have that blank answered. So that was kind of where we were at. And we found out there's two separate processes really that we're really being called to do. It's the oath of allegiance to the Article 6, 1215 Magna Carta, and then the 5 notice that follows that. And then separate to that is where we're actually putting the police on notice that they need to do their job. So these are two separate things that are being asked that are connected, but they are not the same thing. And I wasn't fully understanding that before this. And I don't know if anyone else had any confusion or whether you guys have had any issues. Catherine, please, if you would like to share your experience. Jean will go after you as well. Catherine, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, no, sorry, I was just waving to someone.
Oh, I thought Catherine and Jean were actually putting your hands up to say you wanted to share your experiences, ladies. Oh. Well, did you guys have an opportunity to meet because you guys are local?
We haven't yet, but plans are in motion.
Fantastic, because that's what this is about. It is about community.
Absolutely.
Connection. Catherine, do you have anything you wanted to share to those who will be watching in the recording as to what we're doing and why you've shown up for the last 4 meetings that we've been gathering for?
I've showed up much because of what you're just saying. I really need to just get it to sink in, because you can read, every time I read it, I think, oh yeah, of course, that makes perfect sense. And I go away and 5 minutes later, it's like, what did that say again? So yeah, I just need to keep reiterating and reiterating what I'm reading, and also just keeping up connections with people that are doing it. I just think it's really important that that we just support each other in whatever capacity we're able to do whatever it is we're doing.
Mhm. Yeah, beautiful. Well, it's so wonderful to have your energy, your space, your face all here in where we gather. And so I'm very grateful for you guys showing up. What we were wanting to do, as well as having shared the experience that we had and the clarification that it's two processes. Then Karen, I'm actually from Ontario, so I'm up and I'm Norfolk County, out in the country in Vanessa, between Delhi, Simcoe, Brantford, that area, as is Chantal as well. If Jean, you're out in the UK, and Catherine's in the UK as well. Megan, I believe you are.
I'm in Bristol, and I've just done the first part of the process. So I've just given my things into the police and the magistrates. So yeah, it did feel a bit scary.
Yeah, so you register posted those letters off after having signed the oath?
I did, yeah, I did it yesterday. I signed it with a group in Bristol, and yeah, and I held on to them for a bit, and it felt very empowering at first, and then it felt a bit scary, and then I was sort of up and down with it really. So I'll just keep going with the process. You know, when none of us are in the wrong, we're not doing anything wrong, we're not doing anything rebellious, we're doing everything that we really believe, and it's really good to do something. Yeah. So yeah, I'm in Bristol, so there's 3 of us in Bristol. So it's good.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And Marietti, you are from, I forgot.
I think Alberta.
Okay, I lost myself on the screen. I'm in Alberta, Canada.
You're in Alberta. Okay.
Yeah. They said go west, so I went west.
Like it. Okay, yes. So we've got half Canadians, we've got half in the UK. So we're represented here. Last week we had some from Australia, Ireland as well. So we're really representing, we're showing up, and ultimately we just need to get the groundwork done, as Jackie always says, and everybody else that's part of this. We've heard it a million times, and we're doing it. So Megan, Chantal, and myself all got off our first letters yesterday. And as part of that, just for anyone that hasn't gotten there yet, as you'll see in the units, you send the notice to, what is it? The notice of lawful objection, and then yeah, so the notice of lawful objection and declaration of standing in law, you send off this as we keep the photocopy, they get the original. And then we also, as part of that, print off the 2-page case study. So case study 1, and then you also send a copy of your oath that's signed as well. So that's the 3 parts that you actually send off, right, Marietti? No? Okay, tell us what we did wrong.
Not much, not really anything wrong. You would send your notice of lawful standing and a copy of your oath.
Okay.
And if you wanted to, you could send the statement from Jackie.
The statement from Jackie.
Her latest statement that she did for the judge and for the Alberta courts.
Okay, so case study 1 is not.
Case study, yeah, you want to wait for that one because you're doing the notice, the 5 notice process, which is the notice of objection, or
Yeah.
No,
There should be
yeah.
some evidence with that as well.
Yeah, it's like it's 19 pages with
yeah, it's full
like
of information.
Articles as well, yeah.
Yeah. So you would do the notice of objection for lawful standing, and then a copy of
are the notes up to date?
What was that?
I was going to say, I just followed the note
In the units?
Yeah, there's a guide.
of the 5-step process,
Yep.
and it did say, yeah, the guide. It didn't say anything about a case study being sent in. Is that,
So
you know, I just,
we thought.
yeah.
Yeah. But it's okay because there's notice of obligation and notice of objection. That's where people are getting confused. So the 5 notice process is notice of objection to stand lawfully. That's the 5 notice process. That's the first one of 5. The notice of obligation to English Constitution, that's the different one you serve to the police station. The other one is you register mail them.
Mhm.
Yeah, so 2 different, just the word itself is confusing. Notice of objection and notice of obligation.
Yeah. So the notice of lawful objection and declaration of standing in law is the second, or is the first letter that we send off after having signed our oath, and we include the oath in that first mail off, which we do the registered post and then the tracking. And we save all of those details together because this is literally collecting evidence that we're serving to the police at the end of this, or not to the police we're serving. This all gets sent to the courts once redress has taken place.
Right, yeah. Yeah, when we'll do the rule of law and with the code de jour and all that, yeah, when we have the rule of law.
And so that is actually what that video speaks about as well, Marietti. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or queries before we get into that video?
I just missed the beginning bit. Did you guys go in to speak with the police, or did they contact you?
Well, we thought that we needed to go in. So we misunderstood the difference between the 5 notice process that is by registered post and then the letter of obligation to the police, obligating them to investigate the treason, which is served in person. So those 2 O's for choosing your path of either in person or by post, we missed that memo. So I called the police to find out who we were supposed to make the letter out to, thinking that then we were going to be serving the evidence. And then they ended up having to collect my information in order for us to have a call in or drop by of the evidence that we were going to submit to them, that I told them was going to happen because that's what I thought needed to happen. And so I came into town specifically for it. So I had my mission that I wanted to get accomplished for that day. And then it was just like, oh my God, after we spoke with Marietti, and it's just like, you mean we don't have to go there? And you mean I just had a conversation with, you know, a police officer I went to high school with, ironically enough, that called me back and it's just like, yeah, so like that's not valid. And there's the 1297 Magna Carta that everybody is going for.
Yeah, there's loads of
latter one that says only 4 of the ones in the original was going to be looked after. And I recorded the conversation. I started recording the conversation because I was in front of my computer because Chantal and I were getting everything ready to go down there when he had called us back. And basically when he did, it was just like, I just spoke to him as if it's just like, if you had a 9-year-old on the throne and you were in your position, do you honestly think that the year after you guys consented to the other 60 articles of the Magna Carta 1215, that you would then say, oh yeah, we trust the 9-year-old to make a decision that's going to benefit us without, you know, no, like you wouldn't take out the clause that protected the people. So he didn't know anything about it. I'm sure they would. I was tempted to invite him to come on, to be honest, and just tell him what like is happening, because ultimately he can find it anyway. So there's the part of me that's just like, why are we not getting these officers to come on? Like if we are in the wrong, then like have them out us, or have them ask the question that could then defile it to the place of being able to say, okay, so we are not right, and then what is, and actually replace that. Because right now everybody's just in their own little box and everybody's scared for somebody to infiltrate their box, and it's just like, well, Jesus,
I think that's what everybody should do. Everybody who
That's
goes,
what everybody is doing.
no, and invite them, every cop that gets served, invite them to watch one of these or to join it.
They may be ready and they may not. So by serving them the notices by registered mail, it is to inform and educate them.
Yeah.
That's what we're
Yeah.
doing.
But I think
Yeah.
there is
Yeah.
something to be
But-
said for inviting the lot of them wherever you are to just have the discussion.
Yeah.
You want the paperwork to do the talking when you first start. Otherwise you get
Yeah.
all lost in the transition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, you
Why
do.
we
And
just
we
send
had
the
we had a collective group that served at around about September, that served the police. They went to the police and they served them. I don't know whether they got to all of the 5 parts, but I thought this was all about education, because if you only do it once, that's no good. But what we want is hundreds of them landing on their tables, and we're all standing up. So and it's got to be, everybody's got to do it really, for it to have any weight at all. Otherwise, it's just going to be the same chief of police that's going to be looking at them. If he gets 500 on his desk in the month, he's going to have to dish them out and delegate, and people and have meetings about them.
Marietti, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out, when you say they served them, that would have been the notice of obligation, right? Yeah, so that one is different than the notice of objection. Yeah. So they did do that. There is a video that was put on Facebook, I think, on where 20 some different areas went and served. I think, I can't remember the amount of people, but they went and served each of the police
Yeah,
stations
that's
they would have
right.
had in the UK.
Yeah,
And
that's-
we were asked in Canada to do it November 11th. So not everybody's done it yet. So we need to get the groundwork first, which is get under oath, declare your standing with the 3C, the cops, the courts, and the councils. Then after that, go and serve the notice of obligation.
So with the 3 Cs, when you say the cops, courts, councils, have we just done the court, or we've just done the cops now?
You just did the cops. So that would be, you're declaring your standing to say that you're changing your jurisdiction from the monarch that's been deposed to constitutional law. So you want to let the courts know too.
The
So
courts
that's
at
what
the same
we've done.
time, yeah.
Yeah, I let the courts know as well,
Yes.
because on the process it does say do them both together, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's
on-
best if you do it, because if you're going to serve the police, they need to know that the acts and statutes do not apply because they're not on void since Article 61, 1215 has been invoked. And you also want to let the courts know that you will not go to their courtroom because they're a foreign corporation. So if they try to send you acts and statutes and summons and everything else, you don't belong to it. So they need to know where you're standing lawfully. So you're informing them, you're telling them that you're standing lawful under constitutional law of Article 61, Magna Carta 1215.
Right.
You
So
definitely want to do, there's 2
Yeah.
different forms for the police and the courts.
Mhm.
When you do your first notice, there's a little bit of difference in the wording that they have.
the notice to the crown agent. for the
Yes, and
court.
then notice to the chief inspector or something, or chief constable, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
you just notice on that's a little different. And then you definitely at the same time want to go after your council, your town council. So that's your groundwork.
and
Get
so
the groundwork is the 3 Cs, yeah.
in terms of the units, that would be unit 2, 3, 4 checked off.
No, that would be unit 1, because you're going to do the oath and then you're going to do your first of 5 notices. So you're going to do notice number 1 to the police, to the crown, and to your council. You're going to wait 10 days or so after they receive it to do notice number 2 to the police, to the crown, and to your council. And then notice number 3 and so on.
Right. Maybe. I'm just gonna pull that up. Does anyone have any questions, or you guys want to make any comments?
Yeah, is it right then that after we've done this process, that we then email Jackie to say that we're ready for redress? Is that right, Marietta?
After you've taken your oath and declared your standing to the police and to the crown, yes, you email Jackie.
Okay.
We did notice too. So we're to that place. And then in 10 days, after you've gotten the registered post confirmation that they have actually received it at the station that we sent, which is the to Chief Constable, and notice of lawful objection and declaration of standing in law process, which is unit 2 there, then we go into actually showing and putting them on notice. And so that's where we are in this process, and love hearing your updates because it keeps us all marching forward. And even though there might be some poop in your boots, that's okay, because Marietta has a joke that we would love for you to share if you would, because she shared it yesterday at the end of our call and it was priceless. And now we can actually see you, so it'll make more sense because it's a bit visual.
It's my own version, okay? So because it changes all the time.
Okay.
So Papa Shark is going to be teaching his young son on how to go hunt in the waters. So they see a man, we're going to use a man, not a woman. So there's a man swimming and he's going like this, right? And all of a sudden he sees the shark, so the tail is there, right? The fin. So the fins are going like, Papa Shark is going like 100 feet, we're going to say, like perimeter around the man, okay? And then 75, and then 50 around the man. And the little boy asks Daddy, he says, Daddy, why don't we just eat him now? So he says, well, let's do another turn. So you do another turn. He says, so we can scare the living shit out of them first before we eat them.
I liked it.
Oh, fine. Yeah.
So we might be getting cleaned out, ladies, but hey, we're taking our power back. So let's just roll on. All right. Now
you can shake in your boots, yeah.
Right? Okay. Now I didn't get that. I didn't get your you had sent me the David Wilkinson thing quite a bit ago, but I can't quite find it.
Okay, I sent it on this Zoom class right now in the chat, but I can send it to you.
I understand. Nope.
Yeah, here too if you want.
Okay, we'll stop that share then, and then we'll go on to where you got it in the chat. Oh, beautiful. We'll play it for half an hour, but I just want to tune in with you guys who are live to know, has everybody seen this? Or because it's important information, it's vital information. So you've not seen it, Karen. Is everyone okay to just watch the 30 minutes? Jean, you haven't either, Catherine?
What is it? I don't know what it is.
Oh, that's entirely fair. Okay, so let me just help with that. Okay, so the British Constitution, Re-Exposing Its Secrets by William Keating.
Oh yeah, this is brilliant.
Yeah, so we're
Really
gonna
good.
We'll play the first 30 minutes that are relevant to what we're doing, and then if you guys do have any questions along the way, the brilliant thing is, because you're here, is we can pause it. So if you do have anything that you want to just interrupt, just wait for a good clean cut and then just hey, and I'll pause it. So this meeting is for you guys because you're here above all else, and then for you who's viewing, please be here next time so you have some say in what happens at the next meeting.
The first thing that I'm going to ask you is the question I asked a month ago in another presentation in York. Is Parliament sovereign? And I'm going to leave it hanging just for the moment, if that's all right. And then I'm going to follow it up with another question straight away. Do we live in a democracy? And another one. Should we live in a democracy? So I'm going to come on to answer these questions, but I'm just leaving them hanging for here for the moment. So I was saying just now that I had a good look at your website. And I'm seeing some very nice things. I'm seeing references to the Constitution, which you don't often see. You don't often see that in party politics, where people are actually talking about the Constitution. So we will fight to take care of our own people, especially those least able to help themselves, and to assert the sovereign will of the British people over our servants in Parliament, by campaigning for direct democracy through our landmark policy, the parallel Parliament. Well, the parallel Parliament is your bit, but I do like the references here. I'm enjoying this. So moving on, we've got some other bits here where you said, I'm not marking your exam, it's all right. The only safeguard that exists to preserve our way of life, the Constitution, and central to all of the liberties that we enjoy, liberties that the blood of veterans was shed to preserve, and which we may take for granted, is the principle of democracy, of government by consent, the only legal and moral basis of Parliament's legitimacy to govern. Now, these are great sentiments. I'm really liking this. But what I'm often finding is that even those that might profess to know about the British Constitution, there are often some hidden confusions. And actually, if we dig into that, where is that government consent coming from? So in this presentation, I'm going to rattle through it because I think we've got quite a lot of information here to talk about. But I'm going to start with just laying this out as I understand it. And I was introduced as an expert. I'm not an expert. I've just read into it a lot and quite deeply. And I've also not, I think, not made the mistake along the way of thinking, right, I know about it now. I'm always uncovering more. Now, when we really get into the meat of how consent is given, we begin to realise that there are some confusions here. How is it that the people have sovereignty? I've sort of answered the question there. Is Parliament sovereign? Well, it's the people, actually, that retain sovereignty at all times under the British Constitution, if it's working as it should be. And we'll go into how that is. Now, in this presentation, as I've sort of already hinted at, it's going to be a sweet pill, because I've been saying some nice things about you. But at the same time, there might be the odd surprise, which might come as a bitter pill as well. But that's all right. We can consolidate all of this information. So what we're going to start with is the fact that innately within ourselves, there is a desire to, or at least we feel that there should be an influence over our government. We, the people, should have influence over our government. People feel that they should have that influence. Why do they? Well, the reason for that is you need to ask yourself the question, who came first? Did the government come first, or was it the people? What exists in nature? Well, the people exist in nature. The government is created then, afterwards, by the people. So the government is a fiction. And you cannot have the fiction gaining authority over its creator. I mean, it's an essential principle, isn't it? And what we're talking about here is the system of equity. Now, any system of governance with any country has a single test, and that is it a legitimate system of equity? And what that means, if we just drill into that a little bit, is are all the people under the law equally? Or do some have privilege and are not quite subject to the law in quite the same way? Well, clearly, I think we know that under the British Constitution, it was always intended that everybody is equal under the law. And we're going to drill into that as well. Now, in a society, you need to ask yourself the question, well, who creates society's rules and regulations? Now, if it's the government, then they become the judge and the executioner, because a society is governed through its laws. So the people decide on the character of the society or community in which they wish to live. It is not the people in special positions of power or privilege to decide what is just and fair. It is the people that decide that. They create society's regulation under which they agree to live. And this starts to beg the question, well, how? How does that happen? And I think that's the bit that's missing, maybe in your minds, I don't know. There is a magic mechanism which is often lost on people who perhaps have drilled into the subject of constitutionalism and real democracy, which I'll come on to, and what real democracy actually is. And that primary mechanism that defines democracy currently eludes us as a society. It's very well hidden, very occulted in society, very deliberately. Still very few in society who understand the key characteristic of real democracy. Even many political commentators, either through ignorance or deliberate deception, hide this real truth. So this is the system of equity that we're talking about. It is the people that make up a society themselves that envision the principles of fairness and justice within their own society. And by the way, that was Justice James Wilson, who was the co-author of the United States Constitution. He wrote that in his works, I think it's volume 2, chapter 6. And they fall under the same system that we do. Now, you probably can't see that, but I've put up there the structure of the government as most people understand it now today. And it's certainly the structure of the government that most of those in the establishment would understand it. So we have, if you can't see it, it's the head of state at the top. And then we have 3 branches of government underneath. We have the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. And just to recap, I mean, if you don't know this, and quite frankly, I find it not that interesting actually, because this is the mechanisms of government that I'm not so interested in, because when you see how it's supposed to function, this bit doesn't really matter so much, and you'll see why. So the legislature, of course, is all about, well, that contains Parliament. That's the Lords and the House of Lords and the House of Commons. They're the ones that make government law. They don't make it actually, but they propose it, and then it gets created according to, well, we'll come on to that one in a minute. Then we have the judiciary. That's the court system, judges, and then we have the executive, which is sort of everything else. It's the police, it's the prison service, it's, well, the executive is it's when you execute punishment on the accused, if they've been found guilty. Yeah, that's where it comes from. So they're carrying out what needs to be done. So those are the 3 branches of government. And then at the bottom on the diagram, you probably can't see, is we've got the people underneath. Because let's face it, it's been ingrained within us that government is an authority and the people are underneath. It's not how it is. Now, the reason why those 3 branches are there is that within a functioning government, they're supposed to be checks and balances on each other. But it doesn't deal with the issue that if the entire government machinery is corrupt. Now, let's just think about how most people think that we have influence on the government now. Most people think that we have influence on the government by voting in elections. That's quite important for you guys. And that's actually what most people think democracy is, but it isn't, in fact. That's not the defining characteristic of democracy. So what is it, voting in elections? Now, first, in a moment, we'll just examine, how effective that is in holding the government to account. We'll just have a quick run through of some of the problems, some of the shortfalls, because there are many. In fact, if we just do that quickly. So problems with the system. First of all, we have to fight to be heard. It sort of presupposes essentially that our rights and our freedoms have to be negotiated in some way, have to be fought for. And the most obvious thing, of course, is that it turns the whole country into a competition. Freedoms are gained only ever at the expense of those that lose. Now, further to that, modern legislation micromanages everything. It's laying down the law on too much detail because it was never intended to be like that. The law is supposed to function on principle. So in other words, if we had less of it, then there would be more common ground. The problem we've got now is that the manifesto of a party has to match your worldview and then you'll vote for it. But there's no way that that's going to match everybody else's worldview. It's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, So law needs to do less. Now, further to that, of course, we have things like the parliamentary whip system. So even if, well, you know, do parties actually follow their manifesto for a start? And secondly, when they're actually in power, well, not in power, they're in office, of course. How, you know, we know about the parliamentary whip system. They're actually pushed into voting certain ways and not listening to their constituents, and, you know, we know all that. Now, aside from that, this is where the conspiracy element comes in. I'm generally known as, at my workplace, I think, as their pet conspiracy theorist. And you'll begin to wonder why as we get into this presentation. And the reason why I'm introducing that is because really the covering up and the hiding of how the British Constitution is supposed to work is an 800-year conspiracy. That's what it is. And so a little later on in the presentation, we're going to open up some of the bigger themes here, which, if you're not familiar with, are a little bit frightening to face when you first do so. So, further problems. I'm just going to read this out, actually. When an issue is forced onto the agenda, especially one of which the establishment is not generally in favour, a multitude of delaying and prevarication techniques are used, and misdirection and downright deceit becomes the order of the day in order to confuse the public and generally obfuscate the issues. Further to that, of course, the existence of corporate favours, special relationships and backhanders, leading to politicians winning lucrative positions in industry, powerful positions in government, through what is sometimes known as the revolving door problem. I mean, it just goes on and on and on, doesn't it? I mean, you know, it's totally dysfunctional. Getting worked up now. You may not be able to see that. Now, what I've got there is an illustration of, first of all, on the right-hand side, the diagram that I showed you earlier of the structure of government with the people at the bottom. But on the left-hand side, I've got an illustration which actually is much more accurate. It's the pecking order, as it really is. Okay, so what have we got? At the top, we've got natural law. And I'm going to come on to what natural law is in a moment, but not touch on it too deeply because it's a massive subject. Underneath natural law, we've got the rule of law. People throw that term around without really understanding what it actually is. Then underneath the rule of law, we've got the people. And then under that, we've got government, because government was created by the people. And then underneath government, we've got politicians and public servants, because they work for us. That's news to them, isn't it? I remember I was saying that the creation of government is by the people. We talked about that. So perhaps we should go through exactly what this is now. So if you can see this is in a bit more detail now. So starting with the top, we've got natural law. Now what this is the universe. This is the law built into the universe. I sometimes call it God's law, but I'm not a religious person. It doesn't matter whether you are or you aren't. This is a very deep subject. It's very esoteric material. Now, just keeping it fairly pragmatic for the moment, natural law is that sense of right and wrong that we all have built into us, that sense of justice and fairness. Now, the interesting thing, I was talking with John about this last night, the interesting thing about that sense of justice and fairness is that we all have it, regardless of what culture we exist in. We all understand it. We innately know whether something's unfair. You can go to any part of the world, and the other interesting thing is that we express it as children as well, very young children. We react when something is deeply unfair. Now that sort of suggests it's kind of the exposure of natural law existing within the universe. Now, if you're really into the raw expression of natural law and going back to the Hermetic principles, I did a talk in Nottingham in March, and it's on the New Chartist Movement website if you're interested. But really, natural law is a system. It's almost a system of science, really. It's a system of dynamics that's built into the universe. Some people call it karma. That if you actually do something that is out of alignment with natural law, you're going to get something back. You're going to get negative consequences. Sometimes it's been called consequentialism. So some of you might know Jordan Peterson, interesting character. He's a clinical psychologist, and there's a fabulous piece of video where he talks about how people don't ever get away with it. And he talks about how when he's dealing with people's issues and they've really had some horrendous things happening in their life, and if you trace it back, you keep going back and eventually you'll find something, and it's as if that was the cause, and it's sent ripples into the universe and they've come back. It's very esoteric stuff, but get into that material if you're interested. But at least at the practical level, I think you'll understand, at the empirical level, if you like, that there is something there in all of us, that we all understand the sense of right and wrong. And it's what comes from the golden rule. We talk about the golden rule, the Decalogue, the 10 Commandments. All of that is really a sense of in fact, all of those rules in the 10 Commandments are really about taking property from other people, taking their decision or their choices away from them in some form. So underneath the natural law, we have a manifestation of that natural law into what's visible in the visible realm is the rule of law and common law. So what common law is our conscience, which is the conduit, taking that sense of right and wrong and turning it into man-made laws. Common law is man-made law. It's just not government-made law. It's made by the people. In what situation? Juries. Now you'll be probably beginning to get where I'm going with this. And the head of state, of course, is meant to be charged with looking after that rule of law and keeping it in place and maintaining it. Then we have us underneath that. And then we have the artificial organisation that was created by us, the government. And then, of course, the officers that take oaths, the politicians and public servants. So that's just kind of going through a little bit and understanding that. Now, the next slide it's how we bring these two sides, these two diagrams together. So we can still have the understanding of the three branches of government and roll it into the left-hand side, but it just looks a little different because, in fact, let me just go through. If you can see that, you can see that the people are on the same level as the head of state. Because remember that all are equal in the eyes of the law, including the head of state. They just got an office. Right, I'm going to throw some interesting questions out now. Why is it that English law, British law now, has had such respect the world over? Because quite frankly, if it were not such a serious subject, that would cause many to howl with mirth with the situation it is at the moment, wouldn't it? So why is it respected the world over? How did we get here? How did we get into a position in which the people have nothing but disdain and contempt for the establishment? Because that's the situation. Democracy is our greatest export, so we're sometimes told. So what's changed? That's the key, isn't it? Okay, I'll try and explain what's going on here. Now, we have, I'll play it anyway for anyone who wants to move up to the front and have a look at it. But essentially, we've got what looks like a bunch of garden peas. This is actually us, just members of the community, dots, okay? And one of those individuals becomes the accused, because they've been accused of doing something they shouldn't have been doing. Then we have 12 further people of the community who get picked at random. So they become the jury. And then what should happen is we have another member of our community who is elected to become what we think of now as the judge. But under common law, they're actually supposed to be called the convener. They are not the judge. It's the jury that are the judges, because otherwise it's not trial by jury. It's trial by something else, but it's certainly not trial by jury. Now that situation creates justice in a common law situation. So this is how natural law is manifested through human conscience. That's the situation I've just described. Okay, now I've got, on the next slide, I've got a series of 12 people looking a little bit confused, sitting there behind a desk. They're, of course, the jury. And they've got thought bubbles coming out above them, if you imagine that. And just to give you an idea of what some of those are, so we've got words like fair, question mark, deliberate, question mark, guilty, intent, question mark, would I have done this? Context, question mark, was this planned, question mark. All of these are questions, they're asking these obviously. Malicious, reasons, why? Yeah. Because the essence of that, of course, is that the decision that is returned by the jury is based on principle. It's not based on the outcome. Did they technically break the law? Possibly. That's nothing to do with it, though. It's a question of whether there's guilt. Okay, and guilt is all about whether there is what is called in Latin mens rea. Sounds like something rather unpleasant. Malice aforethought. Is there malice? Is there a malicious intent? Now, there are one or two other important facts about trial by jury that you should know about, because the trial by jury that we have at the moment is a watered down plastic version of trial by jury. But the original proper trial by jury that should be lawfully in place, according to our constitution, is a whole different beast, and it seriously has teeth. Before I get on to why, and you guessed it already possibly, but I'm just going to outline a few other bits and pieces. So it's about motivations, intent, and context. And by the way, the jury are supposed to decide on punishment. They are supposed to give the punishment, not the judge. There should never be any interference from the judge, the convener, because they're not supposed to direct it. And the reason for that is because each juror should be judging privately according to their own conscience. Remember, they're tapping into natural law through their conscience. Is this fair? Is it just? That's what they're asking themselves. Now, in the next slide, we have all of the jurors returning their own individual verdict, their own decision, as guilty, except one of them. One of them's thinking, no, I'm not happy about this. There's something not right. It wouldn't to me feel fair to pass punishment on this individual. So I'm going to return not guilty, quite within their rights to do so. It's a private decision. And therefore, what happens to that verdict overall from the jury? It's not guilty. Because in order for it to be a guilty verdict, every single one of those jury members has to return guilty. It's more important under common law that a good man is not punished rather than a bad man is punished, if you see what I mean. Because that can be rectified later. You try and live in a community where you have done something. I mean, people know about it, don't they? And, you know, what goes around comes around. But what mustn't happen under common law is for a good man to be punished. Now, the most important thing, and this is the absolute critical thing, this is the central point of this presentation. What is the effect of that situation where you've got one individual who's decided not guilty, but let's say, for example, that the accused actually has technically broken the law, broken the legislation. Now, this is the key. What happens in that situation? Well, what happens is that because a not guilty verdict is returned, but he has technically broken legislation, that means that that statute starts the process of being extracted from the statute book. It's called annulment by jury. That's the whole point of trial by jury. So going back to what you are talking about direct democracy, etc., I love it. But actually, there's an even more powerful mechanism already built into the Constitution, and it's called annulment by jury. But they hid it. It's meant to be lawfully in place. It's the most important thing. Now, in that situation, think about it. One single individual caused that statute to be thrown off the statute books. One out of the whole country. Is that power? That's power of the people. Now, the only other important thing to make there before I move on that one is that whole mechanism can be used defensively, of course. We know that when you're accused. But it's also built into the Constitution that trial by jury is to be used as a weapon as well, under common law private prosecution, cost-free. That means that if you're a public servant that has been involved in passing legislation that is deemed to be unfair by the jury, you can be prosecuted by anyone else, by a member of the public, free of charge. That seriously exposes public servants. Can you imagine that? You imagine telling them that now if they were in here. Ridiculous. Yeah, that changes the ball game, doesn't it, completely? So let's just recap a minute. Trial by jury, the phenomenon long upheld by civilized people. Now, this is a quote taken from one of the most important books on this very subject by a gentleman called Ken Dewdney, called Democracy Defined, the Manifesto. And I seriously urge you to look this guy up. Look up the Democracy Defined website. And please, if this is the most important book I've ever bought. I don't have shares, by the way. Because most law books, and I've read some of the books that are read by students of law, and it doesn't talk about any of this, obviously. Well, aren't we surprised? This is what Ken has to say. I mean, he has a lot to say, but this is a particularly good one. The phenomenon long upheld by civilized people, the consciences of a common law jury of 12 form a safer, purer tribunal than those of specially appointed individuals holding permanent offices, lucratively remunerated and bound to enforce the government's legislation. Now, there is actually, just to prove all of this, there is actually quite an interesting plaque in the Old Bailey, which they've gone a little bit coy about because they've moved it. I've never seen it actually, but a colleague of mine at the New Chartist movement was telling me that they've moved it into a rather hidden location, not surprisingly. And this plaque is all about how William Penn, who founded Pennsylvania, of course, and William Mead were tried for unlawful assembly of preaching. And what this plaque is, it commemorates, I'll read it to you. For William Penn and William Mead were tried in 1670 for preaching to an unlawful assembly in Grace Church Street. This tablet commemorates the courage and endurance of the jury, Thomas Vere, Edward Bushell, and 10 others who refused to give a verdict against them, although locked up without food for 2 nights, and were fined for their final verdict of not guilty. And then it goes on and what happened. But the important point here is that they did break the law. They were quite open about it, quite unashamed. But it was regarded that totally unfair. It was not just, and they returned a not guilty verdict. And they got hammered for it by the establishment.
All right, good stuff. Well, I got the message that Marietta said we could stop it now and watch the rest on our own. So at least we have access to all of that. And so that message hopefully gave some insights. And certainly if you felt like you wanted to go back, I did cut it off at 31:59, so just under the 32-minute mark. Any feedback that anybody wanted to share after having listened to that?
I would say watch it again and again and again, because it starts sinking in. Because this is about my 5th or 6th time right now, and you always learn something new.
Yeah, for me, that was the 2nd time. And yeah, you do. More has been learned.
And just to back up what he says about that book is absolutely phenomenal. It just wraps up so many different aspects of it really, really simply. And it's absolute pleasure to read. It's brilliant.
You've had the opportunity to do so, Catherine?
Mm.
What was your biggest takeaway from that book for those who haven't read it yet?
Oh, it's so difficult because it covers so much. It covers the Magna Carta. It covers all different aspects of democracy and the history of democracy, what it actually means, what it means in practice, different perspectives on it. How, it all sounds very simple, but there really is, it is simple, but there still is a lot to it. And I think for me, because I like to be able to imagine what this is going to look like practically, because it is very different to our life at the moment. So yeah, it just is starting to make it much clearer.
Awesome. And that's really one of the things too with all of this. It's like we need to actually create a solid enough vision for people to be able to understand
Yeah.
what comes after.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if it's not a safe option, and by
Yeah.
safe, it only means familiar, because that, as creatures of comfort, is the way that we find safety, through familiarity. So if it's not familiar enough for us to be able to see it and have it be the second time because the first time was in the mind's eye, people are going to be intimidated by what this represents what we're doing. So I want to just bring that into this too, as to say, we're willing to do this. And so we've gathered for more than an hour, and I want to respect everyone's time today. And we'll come again together again next Thursday again at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to do this again. And we'll share more insights and what comes. And if you want to bring your updates, we'd appreciate hearing. This is a community, and we are growing, and so is our power, because we're taking it back, and we're no longer giving it away freely to people that are in positions that are paid, that ultimately they're not necessarily fulfilling the contractual obligation that they were elected for. And ultimately, we have no idea what's happening because we trust the ones that are in the power positions that we think that they got elected to responsibly. So it's just like everything as we know it is different, and we're in that liminal phase between what was and what's becoming. And so I feel like, particularly as women, and the Hopis have a legend about the fact that it is the Western woman that will bring change, because it's like, either we mothers, even though I'm not a mother specifically, we're all mothers of humanity right now. And ultimately, if we don't step into our power and then create a vision to make the children feel safe, mothers can't embrace something that their children can't be safe within. So we're a different kind of mother, or a different kind of the archetype of the mother figure. And it's the mother, maiden, and crone energies that we're really sitting in here, ladies. And then as part of that, I'm not the one to speak into it per se, but it is to say that we're willing to put our faces on camera and have it recorded and have it posted. So we're a different kind of breed. But there's a lot of mothers that are more interested in the safety of their children, not understanding that connection between safety and familiarity, just wanting their child to be kept safe. And none of us make it safely out alive. But at the same time, we have to do our part to help them understand the safety that comes with making change happen, but doing it in a way that's going to set us up for success. So I see that there are words wanting to be spoken. Oh, I misinterpreted that. I thought Marietta, you had something to add in there. No? Okay, that's fair. But
I'm so quiet. Don't worry.
hey, we had that offline conversation. I don't know. You do say that. You do say that you are an introvert naturally, which is the irony of this. And it's just like, even when we were having that conversation with the police officer that called back, it's like, I've never been in a physical fight in my life. Not because I couldn't have been, but because I've chose not to. I don't have any desire to hurt anyone. And it's like, I remember in grade 9, there was like my nemesis growing up. She was just like, you know what, Laura, one day you're going to say the wrong thing to the wrong person and you're going to get your ass kicked and I'm going to stand there and laugh. And I was terrified, not because expressly I was afraid of getting hurt, because I think like I'm quite strong for my size, and I think I could hold my own if I needed to. But it's like, I would never want to hurt somebody that came after me thinking I'd be an easy target because somebody set them up, which is really what's happening right now. It's like the government are completely setting up the ones that are in the positions fulfilling it. And it's like now we who may be introverted, less introverted, extroverted for sure, but but we all have our different personality styles, but we're not conflictual people. It's just you either fall for anything in life or you know what you stand for. But if you don't know what you stand for, you will fall for anything. And as the women that will put our faces on a camera screen like what this is, regardless of how smart or not it may be in the scheme of things, ultimately, we're the ones that ultimately wake up the other red pillars, who wake up the other red pillars, who then can reach the blue pillars, who can then reach the blue pillars. And that's how we become the wave that wakes the world up, from my perspective. Any other comments for today's session? Valuable?
Very.
Yes, yeah, darling, yes. Thank you.
My pleasure. Beautiful. All right. Well, then, ladies, we'll wrap up for today and we'll come together again next Thursday at 4 o'clock again. Keep moving forward with the groundwork. If you've got any questions, you've got the Practical Lawful Dissent UK Canada Commonwealth group to plug into. You've got the faces here on the screen. I think what could be a really fabulous idea is if you want to be part of a Facebook community messenger group for just these summit meetings, so that I can post in with the link. I'm happy to do that if we want to get something like that started, though everybody's already got so many other groups that maybe that's not, and just keep doing it with Meetup the way that we're doing it. You guys all got about here. Telegram, I just literally got Telegram yesterday, so it's another platform to have to figure out and get into. So not opposed, but certainly I think if we can just find ways to continue building community, building strength, keeping ourselves strong, having the outlets to process through the cognitive dissonance we go through every time somebody challenges what we're doing. And we have to really step into our power in a bigger way to say, even though it's not the way we were raised or taught, and we've been told by authority figures that it's not true, that actually what is truth and what is told to be true is not the same. So just staying strong in ourselves and knowing we've got other people that are also being challenged, also being told we're wrong. And anytime you hear somebody, and this is good to be mindful of too, anytime there is a clearing of the throat, a cough, a sneeze, it's movement of energy. So the timing of that is quite perfect. And just to be mindful of that too when you're in conversation with authority figures who may be clearing their throat a lot, or going through some different processes, pay attention to it, because what we have to also understand is there's a lot of energy shifting with this, because as we actually interact with these people and we change what they're aware of because of the education movement that this is, we're actually changing the matrix paradigm, and we're being part of what is going to create the new one too. So the energetics of this to be aware of is to have sympathy or to have compassion for the ones we're connecting with too, as they clear what they thought to be true and then enter into that stage of, holy shit, what do you mean that's not true? And if that's not true, what else isn't true? And holy shit, what does that mean for the state of my entire life and everything that I've made my life about and have been working towards? So we're really at a crucial time in history where we need to be as strong as possible and keep doing what we're doing to be the example for those that don't necessarily have the same strength or willingness to stand up, but that we do, and we're the example to them. So celebrating each of us, pats on the back for being willing to show up again. Thank you. And if anyone else doesn't have anything to say, we'll wrap up today.
Great.
Beauty.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's really inspiring, and we're going to keep going. Yeah.
Woohoo!
Thank you.
Love it. Thank you. Beautiful. All right, ladies. Oh, Jane.
I just want to say thank you. Nice to see everybody.
Yeah. Okay.
Beauty. All right. Sounds good, ladies. We'll wrap it up, and we'll come back again next week. Thanks again.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Perfect. Okay, we did it.